text. But of course, on Tumblr, you could add pictures, you can add videos, you can add music, you can do whatever you want. Blogs are interesting spaces that incorporate both CMC and human-computer interaction, but are really only elaborated personal home pages, making the blog a result of user-machine dialogue, which is sort of interesting. And sort of just talks about some of the things that blogs are. There are there's some main features, they say, of blogs generally. Two main features of blogs emerge. Blogs are updated frequently. I'm asking you to update yours once a week, but a lot of people do it a lot more. But it also requires a minimal writing at time. It depends on how much you want to write in the context of the blog. But again, a lot of folks can put in pictures or links and all sorts of different types of things. And also, there are 6 motivations for blogging, so says Kay from the research in 2005, though other research said it's mostly the motivations are for self-expression and social interaction. But what Kay says is that here are the reasons why people generally blog. Again, generally, we're not really getting into gender yet, but just sort of generally why people blog. Information seeking by checking mass media websites, convenience, personal fulfillment, political surveillance, social surveillance, and expression affiliation. So just lots of different things. And oftentimes blogging is sort of tricky because we don't know exactly who's following us. So sometimes we have ambiguous audience members. Usually we can see who's following us, and sometimes we have control over who follows us. Sometimes we don't, but we don't always know who is actually surveilling us. Is that right? Surveying us, or who has surveillance over us as we are to blogging. I mean, this is some no-brainer stuff, but basically it's just talking about what blogs are. That's the first little bit of the section here, 304 on page 305. Then they start getting to what I think is really the more interesting stuff, and that is gender differences and blogging. So the first thing on slide 6, I have manly blogging with my own made-up little cartoon with John Wayne here, which I think gets to the point. Pardon the pun. First, again, going back to some of the things that the authors here said about performance theory and gender, we do gender through blogging. We perform gender through blogging, and so that's the point. So they're showcasing how men and women do manliness and womanliness, or masculinity and femininity, through the processes of blogging. And so one of the things that happens, they argue, with blogging is that it can sustain already traditional and stereotypical gender norms. So males sort of blog in typical male ways of doing things. They offer filter blogs, which are basically just stuff with, has news and facts and stuff like that. They do more report talk. If you've ever read Deb Tannen's stuff, can't remember the name of her book. Very popular back in the 90s, I think, but she had all these differences between the way men and women communicate. And she said that men do more report talk. That is, they report stuff to you. I am man, listen to me report. Here is the information. And that report talk is never too emotional, just the facts, ma'am, type of thing. And they offer sort of health blogs or medical blogs as examples where men will offer basic information, but it's not really used to support per se. So it's sort of interesting to see how men use blogs in that sort of very sort of stereotypical male reporting info type of way. Compared now with slide 7, women and blogging, with another little cartoon that I made up from Leave It to Beaver, which I still think is funny. Golly, Mom, your blog is just about cooking. May I go look at some online porn? And then June Cleaver responds, not before dinner, Beaver. But basically, what women do is more journal blogging, and that's in fact what I'm asking you to do. More personal, more emotional stuff, more reflective stuff, like a diary online. So, my wife's coming home. Gosh, she's going to catch me. So that's, I mean, pretty interesting. So it's different, and so and women tend to use blogging for social bonding and rapport talk. Rapport talk, different from report talk, is building rapport with folks, a sense of closeness. And women's language, much more than men's language, it's much more reporting in tone. Just the facts, ma'am. Women's language tends to be more inclusive, bring people in, invite people in, more emotionally expressive, passive, sort of less aggressive, less sort of, I am man, hear me tell you what things are about, more cooperative, more accommodating. But some of the things that the textbook says is that also through blogging, particularly when women sort of discuss sexuality, that they can sort of sustain the notion of being sex objects for men, and also mother. So again, it sort of sustains a lot of traditional stuff. So if you look at gender and performing gender or doing gender through blogging, it seems sort of very stereotypical. At least that's sort of what they're saying here in this first part. Now, when we move to other sort of possibilities, slide 8 here, it's not like blogs are totally the stereotypical thing that sustains stereotypical gender norms, even though that seems to be what the research says. Yes, I know you're coming home. And so they talk about issues of women's movements on blogs, and they talk about blogging and inequality, and I'll let you sort of read some of that stuff like that. But basically, the idea here is that even as we have these various inequalities, we can use blogs to try to combat inequality. We can try to combat the idea that technology itself is masculine. So blogging, in other words, can be avenues for liberation and transformation. We can beat back patriarchy, going back to all the stuff that I said earlier when I gave you that sort of feminist lens. That's something that we can do via blogging. So the book talks about sexual liberation and how women can use blogs to blog about their sex lives, and even though I think that could also be stereotypical, then that becomes sort of fodder for men. Female self-expression. I really love the quote in the middle of page 308. I think it sort of gets to the point. Blogs don't only give you the chance to hide, they give you another valuable thing, a space without a title. But what happens after a while of creating the blog? You find yourself in the midst of what you once escaped. The pseudo name is no longer a curtain that hides you, but it becomes the name of being exposed by the posts, one after another. You gain an identity among your neighbors, and blogging, an identity made more defined and cleared by every new post. I went to blog for 10 years and remained to the 10th year thinking about this place as my own place, where my rules apply, and that I could, if I desired, post blank posts. So it can be, in a sense, your own sort of haven to post, and indeed what you want to post, to find, as they say, refuge, identity, and comfort in your own blogging. And then I actually give you a link to the blog that they talk about, the BlogHer, and you can sort of take a look at that. I've taken a little bit of look at the BlogHer. It seems to be sort of, not contradictory, but it has a little bit of stuff in there that I think is stereotypical, that certainly would sustain normative gender roles. But also there's some interesting stuff in there that I think point to processes of liberation from patriarchy. But I will let you take a look at that if you want to get involved or start reading the BlogHer. And then of course it talks about mommy blogs and people getting information. So in other words, even as blogs can be stereotypical, we can also obviously use blogs taking that sort of feminist critique and try to combat patriarchy. That's really sort of the point of that little section. Slide 9, YouTube and vlogs. Basically video blogs. I'll let you read that. It's pretty interesting when you look at gender differences. Men and women employ vlogs quite differently. In a study on YouTube vlogs, men posted vlogs more than women. However, female vloggers were more likely to interact with other vloggers by asking questions and responding. The quality of the vlogs also differs along sex lines. Vlogs created by men had better sound quality. Women created more interactive vlogs with better image quality. Men vlog about public and technological related topics. Women vlog about personal matters. Despite gender differences in the content creation of vlogs, both men and women reported feeling a part of the YouTube community, which is what I'm doing here with all my I guess these are vlogs of what I'm doing. They're lectures. Vlogs might have more impact than blogs on interpersonal relationships, as authors don't just write, but literally talk to viewers. Seeing and hearing the author could forge stronger relational bonds. So some interesting stuff. Next, they offer sort of the big implications for this first big section on gender and blogging. And it is important stuff because it reminds us, I think, of the whole point of the course and the book, and that is that we live in a world of convergence now where CMC and FTF is all converging. Basically, there's a lot of stereotypical stuff. So when we do gender via blogs, we are sustaining or naturalizing or normalizing those stereotypes that are already naturalized or normalized, but we can also empower ourselves to break those chains of hegemony. I think the last little sentence there is really, really good before we get to the gender bending. Through performative actions, especially the use of gendered language, both men and women enact gender through the discourse and images on their blogs. These gender performances often follow traditional gender roles and norms that can lead to the development of many close personal relationships between bloggers and readers. See, Finnegan agrees. There is a, have you ever, gender bending, or dog bending, or canine bending, or, okay. And then I have another picture of Darth Vader there doing some gender bending. Bending the gender. Bending the gender. Okay, so basically you all know what this is. It offers a definition here, broadly defined as men posing as women, women posing as men, or either posing as non-gendered or neutral characters. A lot of this is done through a variety of expressions, cross-dressing, fail to conform to culturally accepted enactment of gender, and they talk about Pat. You remember that? Okay. Now, all this stuff is really quite interesting. They talk about this idea of it being, is it improper, or is it resistance? And, I think it always depends on the context. I tend to dig people who sort of screw with the system a little bit, but do it on purpose to actually screw with the system, even though, some might see some things as improper. It doesn't bother me if a little boy, wants to wear a skirt. I don't care. Or play with a doll. So it can be resistance. So there's some interesting dynamics there that the book talks about. It also talks about how anonymity, that is, people not